Welcome, church family. We miss you.
Good morning, Bridge Church. We miss you.
Hope is alive in me for all the world to see that you are good. Well, love changes everything. Your love has rescued me. Now I'm yours. You took hold of my life. Now all of my love is yours. You took hold of my life. Now all of my love is yours. Well, all that I have is yours. My soul will praise forevermore, forevermore. I come alive in you, in you. My soul will shout forevermore, forevermore. With joy, it is my joy to sing, to bring you an offering, for you are good. And grace, your grace is covering me, save me and set me free. Now I am yours. You took hold of my life. Now all of my life is yours. You took hold of my life. Now all of my love is yours. Well, all that I am is yours. My soul will praise forevermore, forevermore. Well, I come alive in you, in you. My soul will shout forevermore, forevermore, forevermore. Forever I am yours. Forevermore, forever I am yours. We are dancing, we are singing, we are coming alive. We are dancing, we are shouting, come set our hearts on fire. We are dancing, we are singing, we are coming alive. We are dancing, we are shouting, come set our hearts on fire. We are dancing, we are singing, we are coming alive. We are dancing, we are shouting, come set our hearts on fire. We are dancing, we are singing, we are coming alive. We
Hi, friends, and welcome to The Bridge. My name is Susanna, and I am so glad to be with you today. If I'm being totally honest, though, I am also still a little sad because I miss you guys. I miss seeing you in the lobby. I miss singing with you. I miss hugging your kids. But at the same time, I am grateful that technology makes it possible that we can still be the church together. We can still worship together and learn together and even give together. And we are so thankful for all of you who have stayed connected and continue to give during this time. It is allowing us to prepare for all the exciting things that we have coming up the rest of the year. And as you probably know, it's all kind of up in the air. We don't really know what the next few weeks or months will look like. But know that we are talking and figuring that out. We are monitoring the guidelines and talking to other folks who know a lot more than we do. But we are looking at having some live worship options in June. So the first Sunday in June. And it may be that you have to register. It may be that it's only the sanctuary and not kids area. You're going to hear more details as we get closer to that time. But just know that we are just as eager to be with you as you are to come back. And so all of that will be happening. What we know is happening for sure is our Fuge camps. We will be taking our teenagers to Mobile, Alabama, July 20th through the 25th. And that will be a great time that we can serve the folks there. And then also our Mexico mission trip. We are praying that that can still happen the week of fall break. And that is where we get to partner with Living Hope International and just help serve in their orphanage and partner with all they're doing in their medical mission, in their church, in their university, in their school, and in their orphanage. And so if you are interested in helping with that, or if you have a teenager who wants to go to Fuge camps, or if you have a child, you know that you want to be a part of Vacation Bible School as that comes up, just send us an email or get in touch with us this week, and we can give you some more information on those things. But we are glad you're with us today. We are sending a huge Happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers, and we have a cute little video for you to watch now before we continue in worship.
Mother's Day looks a lot different this year.
Mommy needs a quarantine.
And our moms may be spending a lot of time with their kids right now. A lot. Like, so much time. And even though they love their kids to the moon and back,
Mommy, where are you going?
sometimes moms need a little alone time.
Mommy!
You know, to recharge.
Go talk to Daddy. Mommy! Where are you? Are you in there? Mommy! We can see you. Up and up!
I just wanna lie in the sun. Whoa, lie in the sun.
But no matter what's happening in the world, their favorite way to spend time is with their family.
But now my only win is now, and my only wear is when I'm by your side.
In good times, in hard times,
Mom! You're breaking everything!
in uncertain times. Thank you, Mom, for making time for us every single day.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. I ask that you would watch over us as we go to bed and rest, that you'd speak to us in Bible stories and speak to us in
When you move, the darkness runs for cover. When you move, no one's turned away. 'Cause where you are, fear turns into praise. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. When you move, the outcast finds a family. When you move, the orphan finds a home. Lord, here we are. Oh, teach us to love mercy with humble hearts. We bow down at your throne. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. King of all generations, let every tongue and nation surrender all to you alone. King of all generations, let every tongue and nation surrender all to you alone. You alone. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. Oh, so come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you. King of all generations, let every tongue and nation surrender all to you alone. You alone, yeah. King of all generations, let every tongue and nation surrender all to you alone. So come, move, let justice roll on like a river. Let worship turn into revival. Lord, lead us back to you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Bridge, and happy Mother's Day. We are excited to be able to celebrate this time with you. I hope that you've had a great week. I hope you've taken time, if you have your mothers with you or are still with us, to be able to communicate with them. I know it's a different day, and many of you are separated from your family, but I do hope that you will take the time, if you have that blessing of having your mom still in your life, to be able to tell her Happy Mother's Day today and thank her for all of those things that you forgot to thank her for all throughout your lifetime. But it is a special day. It's an awesome time to be able to remember those that we love the most. So Happy Mother's Day to my mom. I know you're watching as well, so sorry I am not with you, but we look forward to getting with you very, very soon. So Happy Mom's Day. I love you for that. We are going to start a new series today looking at some people throughout biblical history that had to spend some time alone, that were separated from those that they cared about, separated oftentimes from those that they loved and that they trusted, and had to learn some lessons the hard way. And today I want to jump into the life of Joseph. If you have a Bible and you're following along, it'll be in Genesis, the first book of the Bible. His story that we're going to look at today actually begins in chapter 39. There's several chapters that cover the life of Joseph, but we're going to take a look at chapters 39 and a couple after that. Joseph, if you're not familiar with his story, is the favorite son of a man named Jacob. Joseph has 11 other brothers. He is the father's favorite. Make no bones about it. There are gifts that he received that other brothers did not. They all knew he was. He was known as a little bit of a know-it-all, and he had a reputation for being a bit of a tattletale. None of those things endeared him to his brothers. And then there was a time we read about in the book of Genesis where he actually had gathered with the family, and he was telling his brothers about a dream he had had, in which the interpretation of the dream was that there would be a time when all of the brothers would actually bow down to him. That did not go over well at all. Later on, at the age of 17, how long after that revelation, after that dream, we don't know. But at the age of 17, Joseph's dad asked him to go check on his brothers, to check on the progress that they were making that day. He sent him out to go find his brothers to see how things were going. As Joseph was arriving there where his brothers were, they saw him coming at a distance, and began to talk to each other. And they began to make fun of their little brother. And they began to talk about how difficult it was to be his big brother. And their anger and their frustration and their jealousy got to the point of boiling over, so much so that they said, let's do away with Joseph. Let's do away with our little brother, this little dreamer. And they made the decision that they were going to take him and throw him to the bottom of a well that was dry at the time, and they were going to leave him. Well, as they were coming up with the plan, there was a caravan that came through, passing through their land on the way to Egypt. The caravan was there, and the caravan had, among other things, slave traders aboard. And there was a slave trader that they offered their son, or they offered their brother to, and he purchased Joseph. So Joseph is sold off into slavery. The brothers decided that they were going to take his cloak, take it home, and say, look, something awful has happened to Joseph. A wild animal has taken him. We've got blood here on the cloak. Joseph, meanwhile, is shipped off. He's taken off to Egypt, and he's forgotten. He went from being the chosen one to being the forgotten one. And no one is coming after him. No one is going to come find him. There is not a Jacob moment where he musters up the strength to pull off a Liam Neeson and call and say, you're going to let my son go. Otherwise, I've got a particular set of skills. None of that stuff was happening. He was on his own. He was gone. Other people thought he was dead, and no one was coming for him. And then we find that he is actually purchased by a man named Potiphar, who is the head of the palace guard for the Pharaoh. So he now is in the possession of someone else. Potiphar now owns him. And we have this odd quote stuck in the story in verse 2 of chapter 39. It reads, "The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the house of his Egyptian master." Now that sounds really good to see that the Lord was actually with Joseph in this moment. But notice that nothing about the situation has changed. He's still a slave. Imagine being Joseph and praying to God and saying, God, I need your help. I've been sold into slavery and I need you in this moment. And hearing God say, absolutely, Joseph, I will help you. I'm going to make you the best slave in the entire house. Not really what he was hoping for. He was hoping for a rescue. He was thinking more in terms of freedom. But God instead says, no, I'm with you here, and I'm going to make you the best slave in the house. Well, Potiphar realized that there was something special about Joseph. And although Joseph remained a slave to Potiphar, Potiphar increased his responsibilities. And as he increased Joseph's responsibilities, Potiphar continued to experience wealth that he had not experienced before. So he knew something was going on here with Joseph in terms of his possessions and his property, and he gave him more and more rights. Well, not only did Potiphar realize there was something special about Joseph, Potiphar's wife also realized there was something special about Joseph. And again, she attempted to seduce Joseph. Again and again, he refused her advances. And one day, she surprised him while he was at work. She literally grabbed onto him and grabbed on so tightly that when he fought her off and he left, she stood there holding his cloak. She began to scream. She was embarrassed. Potiphar's other servants came running, and she explained to them that Joseph had tried to take advantage of her. And she screamed, and he left without his clothes. When Potiphar got home, she told him the same kind of story, and Joseph was arrested, and he was taken off to prison. Now that is messed up on so many levels, as if his life had not already been difficult enough after being hated and betrayed, sold by his own family, by his own brothers. He is, at that point, in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Then we have that phrase again in verse 21 of chapter 39. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. That's the same scenario, just in a different spot. The Lord's with him, but nothing has changed. Joseph is still a prisoner. He just now has an opportunity to be the best prisoner in jail. Well, time passed, and the Pharaoh in his palace held some sort of event, and at the event became frustrated and even offended by something that the cupbearer and the baker had done. The cupbearer was one of the closest people to the king, to the Pharaoh. Baker, obviously, taking care of his meals and all those provisions. Well, he got offended by those men, and he had them thrown into jail, had them arrested and taken off. So while they're in jail, they meet Joseph, this one who has the favor of the Lord, but is also still in prison. While they're there in prison, they have dreams. Each of them independently has a dream. And they find out that Joseph is known as a dreamer and that he knows about dreams. He knows about interpreting dreams. So Joseph interprets their dreams. And in chapter 40, verse 14, after Joseph interpreted the dream for the cupbearer, this is what he said. He said, "When all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." So Joseph has one simple request. Cupbearer, you know, because I've interpreted your dream, that you're going to get out of here very soon. And when you do, just remember me. I'm just asking that you put in a good word for me, because I should not be in this place. I should never have been thrown into prison. I never did what they said I did, and I need your help. 3 days later, sure enough, Pharaoh had a birthday party that he threw for himself, and at the party he asked that the cupbearer and the baker be brought to the party. When he did, the cupbearer was restored to his position, just as Joseph had interpreted his dream. And the baker was actually executed, which is exactly what Joseph had said would happen as he interpreted the baker's dream. Then in chapter 40, verse 23, we find out what will happen with Joseph. It says, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Imagine being on the inside of the prison, waiting on a rescue that was never going to come. Imagine thinking that someone was on the outside going to bat for you and speaking up for you and doing his very best to try to get you out of your situation, only to realize that nothing was actually going to happen. I wonder how many days it took Joseph to realize that he had been forgotten again. After a day or two, I know he certainly must have understood that the event was going to take place. And then a few days later, he had not heard anything, but maybe things moved slowly in the Egyptian palace. Maybe the Pharaoh was slow to make decisions. Then weeks went on and months went on, and at some point, probably sooner than later, Joseph realized he had been forgotten again. And some of you know what that feeling is, that feeling of being forgotten, of everybody else moving on with their lives, and you're stuck. You're there left behind, feeling very much forgotten. Life has gone on without you. People are moving on without you. You feel like you're a slave to the situation, and you ask God to help you, and he responds by making you some sort of semi-successful slave. Or you feel imprisoned by the situation, by the betrayal, by the frustration, whatever it is that you've experienced, and God responds by letting you know he's there, but also by simply helping you become the best prisoner that you can be in your cell. It's not fair. It's not right. And you and I have an opportunity then to choose how we're going to respond. We can complain and we can contaminate our character. We can blame and bring bitterness into our lives. We can sulk and sour our feelings of significance. And we can whine instead of choosing to wait. But if we look at the life of Joseph, we realize that faith is formed when we feel forgotten. When we feel most forgotten, that is oftentimes the setting, the lab in which God begins to do his greatest work in our lives. And Joseph was sold into slavery when he was 17 years old. He was 28 when he interpreted the dream for the cupbearer and asked that he be remembered. He was a slave or a prisoner for 11 years. None of us would have blamed Joseph if by this time he was angry and rude, bitter, difficult, and if he had actually given up and had no hope of becoming anything more than he actually was in that moment. But he wasn't. He had chosen to use that time as a time of preparation. Preparation for what? Well, Joseph didn't know either. He understood dreams. He could interpret dreams, but he didn't know the future. He didn't know exactly what was going to happen for him. All he knew was that whenever God was ready to use him, he was going to be ready. Whenever the time came for God to call him out to that greater purpose, whatever that thing was that God had prepared for him, whatever story that God had written for him, whenever that time came, he was going to be ready, and he looked at these moments as an opportunity to develop. While we are separated, stranded, and even in solitude, we are either setting ourselves up for future success or we're setting ourselves up for more disappointment and more discouragement. It's one or the other. However we're handling this separation and us being divided from each other, it's either going to set us up for future success or it's going to set us up for discouragement. Have you ever thought that maybe God is ready to reveal the reason behind so much of your story and why you've had to endure what you've had to endure up until this time? But you're not experiencing that and you're not learning that and he's not revealing that to you right now because you're not ready. You have not allowed him to develop your life, your spirit, your character. Your character is so underdeveloped that God is not going to reveal to you yet why you've gone through some of the things you've gone through, why you've endured some of the things that you have endured. God's waiting on you to be prepared for that. And many of us have experienced 6 weeks of the simple life, not the easy life. And many of you who have been fighting on the front lines and trying to do whatever you can to keep people safe and keep people healthy, maybe it's different for you. But most of us have experienced 6 weeks of a different kind of life. Not necessarily easier, but simpler, less stuff. We have more margin. We have more opportunity. And how have we responded? Well, we've either complained and blamed and sulked and whined, or we've looked at this time of separation in a way that Joseph looked at it. As much as he hated it, as much as he wanted it to change, he allowed God to form and to develop, grow, strengthen, and mature his character in this time of being apart. Maybe the reason that you've not experienced whatever it is that God has yet for you in this story that he's written for your life is because you're not ready for it. And I wonder for most of us, what if this was supposed to be the time all along, that pivotal time when God was going to reveal what it is that he has next for us? I wonder if God was going to speak to us more clearly than we had ever heard him before, but we've wasted this opportunity. We've wasted these moments of separation and isolation because our spirit just hasn't been there. And with immaturity, with frustration, with anger, with sin, we've not prepared ourselves for what it is that God has for us. Well, let's get back to Joseph. 2 years had passed since he asked the cupbearer to remember him. Joseph is now 30 years old, still in prison. He hasn't seen real freedom. He hasn't experienced real happiness since he was 17 years old. He's either been a slave or been in prison the entire time. Altogether, 13 years of abandonment and separation. Well, Pharaoh, at this point, has a dream. We've had a cupbearer with a dream. We've had a baker with a dream. Joseph had even had dreams early on. Well, now the Pharaoh has a dream, and none of his wise men, none of the people in his inner circle, in his council, could interpret the dream. And in chapter 41 in Genesis, beginning in verse 9, the cupbearer speaks up. We read, "Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. 'Today I have been reminded of my failure,' he told Pharaoh. 'Some time ago you were angry with the chief baker and me, and you imprisoned us in the palace and the captain of the guard. One night the chief baker and I each had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in the prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he predicted.'" In that moment, when the king, the Pharaoh, is struggling and searching to find anyone to help him, the cupbearer remembers this Hebrew that was in the jail cell near him. And he brings it up to Pharaoh. Pharaoh sent for Joseph. Joseph was brought into the palace, and he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. Pharaoh was so impressed that he elevated this prisoner, this former slave, this foreigner, to the point of being the second most powerful man in his kingdom. In chapter 41, verse 43, it says, "Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, 'I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval.'" As far as Joseph is concerned, for years, people had tried to stop what God was planning for Joseph, but they failed because of what God was doing in Joseph. They felt like if they could change the circumstances, if they could alter the obstacles, if they could create more difficulties, then that would stop what it was that God had planned for Joseph. They failed to realize that it was all actually hinging on what God was doing in Joseph. Evidence of this growth and this change, this development that happened in Joseph's life is found at the end of the story. Because there was an eventual reunion between Joseph's brothers and Joseph. There was a famine in the land. The brothers needed something to eat. They desperately needed help at home. So they left their father and they traveled to the palace. And there they were brought before their brother, Joseph. And they knelt and they asked for help. And Joseph, in chapter 45, verse 5, told them, he said, "Don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives." He said, I'm looking at my own life and the loneliness and abandonment and fear and isolation and separation and all that I've gone through. And I know that God was in it. I know that he was there because he provided an opportunity in all those moments, those 13 years of struggle and even more years of separation since then. In all that time, God was actually at work. So don't be mad at yourselves for what you did to me. I use it as a time to grow. I use it as a time to learn who I am and who I've been created to be. And now I'm in a position where I'm able to help even more people. Whether your isolation, your separation in life, this season or another season, maybe a season to come, is because of a pandemic or betrayal or sickness or gossip or disappointment, whatever it is, whatever the reason is, you are not alone. And my encouragement for you is to take a look at the story of Joseph and to be reminded this is your opportunity to grow. And there will be people, and even the devil himself will use all those moments, all those hard things that you've gone through, all the betrayal, all the hatred, all the frustration, all the gossip, all the junk. They'll use all of those things to try to keep you from experiencing the story that God has written for you. But God's story is not dependent on those things and even on those people in you. It's all hinging on what God is doing in your life, how he's developing, how he's growing you, how he is transforming your character. Because in the end, Joseph became exactly the person that God had created him to be, in spite of all this stuff. And so whatever separation you're feeling right now cannot stop the plans of God. The only one that has the power to stop those plans is your own resistance against his development in your life. So I want to challenge you this week to take a look at the opportunity that you've been given with maybe a little more margin, a little more opportunity, a little more isolation, a little more separation, and allow God to speak into that moment. And instead, and I'm guilty of it too, of whining about how things are, ask God, how can you use this time to shape me and form me so that when I am brought back together with the people that I care about, I am brought back together with the people that I'm on mission with, that I'm a different person and I am the person that you've actually created me to be. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for loving us enough to put us in positions to succeed. And we often do not recognize those positions as opportunities. We see them as obstacles or disappointments or moments of discouragement. God, help us to be able to see your hand in all of it. We don't have to be thankful for the hard times, but we can be thankful for what we've learned through those. We don't have to be thankful for the difficult roads we've walked, but we can be thankful for where you've allowed us to be at the end of that road. So shape us, inform us, grow us. Don't allow us to stand still. Whenever that time is for you to present to us and for us, whatever that next step is, we want to be ready. And if we don't take advantage of this moment now, we're not going to be ready, and we fear we'll miss the opportunity. God, continue to be patient with us. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your provision. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
We're singing, oh, we're singing, oh, come like you want to, come like you want to. Jesus, have your way. God of the breakthrough, nothing can stop you. Let your freedom reign. You're falling now like heaven's rain, enthroned above your children's praise. You're tearing down our barricades as we sing. We welcome the healer in this place. your children's praise. You're tearing down our barricades as we sing. We welcome the healer in this place. We welcome the author of our faith. We welcome the God who makes a way. His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus. Your living waters fall on sun.